Good afternoon and welcome to part three of this three-part series with Jeff McKee Consulting and MangoBytes AI. My name's Jeff McKee, and then I'm joined by Vijay Casaretti here with MangoBytes. And so today we're going to go look under the hood of how the MangoBytes AI solution was developed and what is the technology stack that it sits on. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Vijay, and we'll go through a few slides to do a deep technical dive on this. So Vijay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session of this series. So let me start with explainability by design. When most people use AI, they just see the output, the answer, the summary, and the recommendation. But in the enterprise, as we all know, the real questions begin right after the answer. Where did this come from? Why did the model say what it did? Who had access to what kind of data? And perhaps more importantly, can we trust this at scale? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through exactly what happens when users interact with MangoBytes AI, specifically Pixie and our broader set of specialized AI agents, and how we design the system so the assumptions behind every answer are not hidden but surfaced right at the front. Too often, when a user asks a question and gets an unexpected answer, they're left guessing. Did I ask the question wrong? Did the AI somehow misunderstand me? Or did the system make an assumption that I wasn't aware of? So at MangoBytes, we address this directly by building explainability into the system by design. So when a user submits a prompt, Pixie in this particular case generates a clear plan of action showing how the question was interpreted, what assumptions are made, and what steps the agent intends to take. So this allows the users to review, challenge, and perhaps maybe modify those assumptions before proceeding, or especially if you don't agree with the answer. So let's look at a concrete example, such as the one that we see on the screen. So in this case, as the user asked, plot production and profit for the last 12 months, as well as forecast for the next 12 months for the Austin Salt Flat field. So as we can see in the plan of action, Pixie explicitly states what it means by the last 12 months. For example, December 2024 through November 2025. If that time range doesn't match the user's intent, they can simply adjust it and re-ask the question. So therefore, the AI doesn't necessarily force a black box interpretation, but rather it's inviting collaboration. So that's the key point that I wanted to make it here. So now with that, hopefully, let's move to the next slide of security, scale, and safety by design. So hopefully this gives the context, and then we'll move to the next slide, where we'll look at under the hood. So at MangoBytes, we work with enterprises in the upstream oil and gas and the energy and renewables industries. So all these enterprises are heavily regulated and operationally complex environments. So, and for all of these companies and assets, AI is not an experiment, but it's rather a mission critical infrastructure. So that's why from day one, MangoBytes AI was designed around three non-negotiables: enterprise grade security by default, scale by design, and safety at every layer. And we'll talk about each one of these things as we go through it. So this is also the reason why MangoBytes is built 100% on the Microsoft stack. Microsoft gives us something essential: a mature enterprise-grade control plane with identity, access management, compliance, and observability, all built in, proven, and trusted. So through Azure AI Foundry, MangoBytes integrates seamlessly with the broader AI ecosystem. So this is something very important that gives the flexibility for the users So including multiple LLMs such as OpenAI, Mistral, Gemini, and so on and so forth. But here is one key distinction. All these models are interchangeable, but the governance is not. So what we notice is that our customers want the freedom to use the best model for each task without sacrificing things like security, compliance, or operational control. So whether you're already a Microsoft customer, a partner, or just starting your AI journey, MangoBytes fits naturally into how you operate or how you want to operate. So with that context, let's go under the hood as we move to the next slide. So this is actually a very busy slide. So I'll do my best to sort of walk through some of the principles in here. So this diagram represents the MangoBytes AI architecture. So instead of walking through all the different boxes and arrows, so let me walk through how a user request flows through the system. So when a user submits a prompt, which is what we see on the top left, identity is enforced through Microsoft Entra, IDE, and JWT tokens. So all the traffic flows through Azure front door with authentication and throttling handled by Azure API management. So I think up until that part, I think we all can relate to it. So from there, the request moves through three core architectural layers, which is what I want to explain all these different boxes that we see in here. The first layer is the orchestration and reasoning layer. So this is what we refer to as the intelligence layer. So here, as we come to the middle in the command agent, so here what the system does is it breaks the request into different tasks. And it selects the right tools based on the tasks, such as some of those tools that we see on the top left, things like AI search, Bing search, and so on and so forth. And then it also engages the domain-specific agents, depending on the task, of course, which is what we see on the bottom left. Things like production agents, forecasting agents. So there's a whole bunch of agents that we have in our library. And this command agent, selects and engages those domain-specific agents depending on the nature of the task. And then, importantly, determines which data sources to access via MCP servers and APIs. So here, what is very important to note is that this is where the data sources expands both the internal data, such as the ERP systems, the SCADA systems, SharePoint, emails, the structured and unstructured. So all the data that sits in a variety of tools and systems, but also the external data, such as the Railroad Commission in the case of Texas, as well as the EIA. And there are so many other very insightful data sources through public APIs. And then, of course, one of the most important aspects of it is selecting the most appropriate model for each task, through Azure Foundry. So what we have noticed is that different tasks require different sort of sophistications within the LLMs, and certain LLMs work great for certain tasks, and certain LLMs aren't so good. And so therefore, we are not only pre-selecting, but also constantly monitoring, because the world of AI and the world of LLMs is constantly changing in terms of performance, in terms of like what it does for each task. So therefore, we want to have that flexibility to be able to not only to tap into the different LLMs, but use the right type of model, but most importantly, all within the same governance framework. So this gives the customers and the users the flexibility without really worrying about which model to use, and the idea of fragmentation. So one of the most important things as we do all of these things, the different tools, the different agents, the different LLMs, the data, both the internal and the external, is that we got to bake in the observability and the explainability into this. So each decision, each tool call, each model interaction, we'll have to log it, we'll have to trace it, we'll have to review it. And so that part is very important. So that's part of the overall layer one, the orchestration and the reasoning layer. And now let me talk a little bit about the second layer, which is important, which is not reflected as we see in here on this particular slide, and maybe somewhere it's buried in there in some of those boxes. So which is what we call the knowledge and grounding layer. So where the idea is that MangoBytes AI grounds every response in enterprise knowledge. So what that means is that agents retrieve information from approved documents, databases, and systems of record. And knowing fully well that this access to all of the systems and documents and systems of record is permissions aware, sources are tracked, and of course, we got to be able to preserve the provenance. And so basically what that means is that if the AI can't cite it, it can't say it. And so this is one of the ways in which we can reduce the hallucinations and build real trust with the answers, and so therefore with the users. So that's the layer two, which is equally important. And then finally, the layer three, which is what everybody is concerned about, is the security and safety layer. So the security and the safety layer is, of course, embedded. It cuts across all the different components as the request flows from the beginning and all the way through the different agents and the models and the data, and then comes back with the response. But let me actually break it down into multiple pieces of it. So the first one, which I briefly talked about, is the identity and access control. So there are a couple of things that I want to emphasize in here. So the first one is the Entra ID and JWT tokens, which is a pretty standard thing, where the user level identity is enforced, and then, of course, we want to do that so to ensure that only authorized people can interact with these agents. The second one is the row level security. It's implemented at the database level to ensure the data isolation. Agents only access the rows the user is permitted to use. As trivial as it sounds, but it can be non-trivial, and so therefore it's very important to have that piece. Then the scoped permissions. Agents operate with real-time data access that's strictly limited by predefined permissions, which is also very important. And then the granular sort of the access controls, where we also refer to as the least privilege. Agents are designed to operate with minimal permissions, the idea being to reduce the exposure and the radius, the blast radius. And finally, the edge authentication and request governance. So the platform runs behind Azure Front Door, as I talked about, with throttling, to control access, and of course, to make sure that it doesn't go out of hand, and especially, the abuse patterns. The second piece is the infrastructure security. So I'll just mention the highlights in here. The Azure Key Vault, which we see in here, where all sensitive information, the API keys, secrets is managed securely. The private endpoints used for sensitive to systems. So traffic remains within protected networks, not exposed to the public internet. Obviously, the environments are isolated. Each agent is hosted in an isolated, scalable environment using Azure Container Apps. And one of the questions that we always get is, hey, how much of my data, my questions, do the other LLMs, the third-party LLMs have access to? Can they see it? Not only can they see it, but can they train it? So basically, all the data, all the questions is encrypted, in transit, and at rest, and none of the data is used by other LLMs to train them, right? So that should give the comfort and confidence, from an enterprise standpoint. And then finally, in the infrastructure security, it's important to highlight the data residency controls. Customers can choose where the data is stored and processed, supporting all the regulatory and compliance needs. And then obviously we can keep adding the layers to the security piece, depending on how robust that the enterprises would like to see, right? Of course, there is varying sort of levels and layers within the security itself. I mean, you can make it like super secure and keep building all these layers. And so therefore, we can work with the customers for advanced sort of security, to keep adding these different layers. And of course, that would add more costs. But then, if customers want it, that's something that we can do that. And then finally, the monitoring, guardrails, and auditability, which I briefly talked about, which is in the bottom right in here. So the guardrails enforcing the response structures, including automatic retries and errors, and monitors output quality. So this is something that we may not, from a user perspective, we may not observe it, but we got to have all of that to be able to go back and check in on. So the LLM evals, so that there is this continuous testing, validating the accuracy of reasoning chains to reduce hallucinations, performance issues, and then of course the debugging aspects of it. The observability, full trace of logs of decisions, tool use and outcomes, and making sure that we can audit all of it. Operational monitoring is described in terms of tracking usage, performance, errors, and cost. So obviously, all of these things become important for enterprise governance. And then the end-to-end auditability framing. So basically, the thing to highlight here is that the architecture explicitly emphasizes the traceability of the decisions, not only in the behind, like what you can't see, but also in the way that the plan of action is highlighted, for the user itself. So making sure that everything is audit ready for regulated high stakes operations. And finally, I want to highlight this one very important piece is that before any query reaches a command agent, it passes through a routing and classification layer, which is also we refer to as the gatekeeper. So basically, this classifier identifies sensitive or restricted topics, high stakes ambiguity, where hallucinations could create risk. And so the idea behind is that the system can apply stricter controls, rerouting, or human oversight. And this particularly becomes very important, especially as we get questions around how safe is the AI. And so these are some of the ways in which we are building safety by design into the architecture. So with that, we can go to the next slide, which is sort of the empowering the users. And so the idea behind all of these architectures, the safety, the security, the governance, the scale, is essentially ultimately exists to empower the users. And so through MangoBytes AI Studio, we have 5 core capabilities, so which I just wanted to briefly, highlight them. So this is obviously, in addition to the AI agent library, Pixie, the AI analytics. So the AI Studio is one of the key components of our platform. So through the studio, so the first one is the agent builder. So this is enables the users to build and customize AI agents for specific roles. And we're constantly building those agents. And so on top of it, to be able to refine it, to be able to build completely new set of agents. So that's where we use the agent builder. The next one is the workflow builder. So the idea behind this is recognizing that no two teams operate the same way. 2 geologists, 2 compliance specialists, 2 engineers. I mean, they all work very differently. They all have a different way of looking at the same thing. And so how do you have these agents? How do you stitch them in a way that meets your workflow and not the other way around? And so that's the idea behind the workflow builder. There are lots of bells and whistles in here to be able to introduce more controls, things like notifications, at different stages to make it work for you. Then we have the dashboard builder. So the idea behind this is, how do you create charts? How do you create plots on the fly simply by asking questions and then bookmarking them, and then of course sharing them with with your colleagues, and then collaborating with them. So this is an important part which is traditionally missing in the dashboards So this becomes such an important enabler. Then the connector builder, synchronizing the data, especially across the non-standard legacy systems, to give that opportunity to build connectors and synchronize the data. And then finally, the custom model builder, um, uh, recognizing that there are a lot of non-standard problems, certain unique problems that users deal with, and so giving them that opportunity to build, their own sort of the unique models that work, for them. So finally, as I close, so when we look at MangoBytes, what we're really seeing is not a black box, but a system that we can reason about, govern, and trust. And so that's what we mean by secure, scalable, explainable, trustworthy AI on the Microsoft stack, and how we make that trust operational. And so that's what we keep referring to, building the frontier firm of the future, one AI agent at a time. And with that, let me hand it over to Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, VJ. Great job and the deep dive of the MangoBytes AI solution. We just got a couple more slides here. So because this solution has been in production for some time with upstream oil and gas customers, it's fairly quick to get some of these agents up and running in an environment. So VJ did a great job of providing, under the hood with the entire Microsoft stack. The customers can choose their LLM, and this is a platform that the LLM sit on top of. And so to go from the idea to live agents in 4 to 6 weeks is very doable because this is a production system. So there's a week 1 with a kickoff and objectives, weeks 1 and 2 design agents and selection. You saw like the agent builder. So there's 30 agents in production. There's 20 more that are being developed, and we'll go over 100 agents in the next 12 months. But there may be some agents that certain customers say, yeah, I want to custom build an agent, and there's a way to do that, rather quickly. And then build and connect, as VJ mentioned, test and validate, and then train and go live. So the actual get up and running on this solution for some customers can be fairly quickly and get to that ROI, that time to value for the upstream oil and gas customers. So that's just a little, overview of what a roadmap might look like to get quickly up and running. And then, to take it to the next step, to bring this Agentic AI into your 2026 plan, we can do an AI ROI overview. We can do a MangoBytes AI architecture and security session. So where VJ and others can go deep dive into your particular needs as a customer of what you're looking for and your uniqueness. And then to engage in some of those, you can contact me, Jeff McKee. There's my email and my LinkedIn and my Calendly. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining and listening to this deep dive session. Thank you, VJ, for explaining all of this to us. I think that's been very helpful. VJ, any last things before we sign off?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Happy holidays, everyone. And yeah, there is also the MangoBytes AI website. If you want to learn a little bit more, want more detail, there are a lot of good resources in there as well.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a bunch of case studies in the MangoBytes AI website, and then you'll see some blogs, and some of them are technical blogs. A little bit we touched on today, but yeah, there's lots of information out there, as well as their demo vignettes on most of those AI agents. So if you want to see a 3 to 5 minute demo of those agents, some of which we demoed last week. But there's a bunch of other demos out there that you can look at in the MangoBytes AI website. And with that, yeah, thank you, and happy holidays to everyone. All right, take care.